Welcome to the Next Level Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, best-selling author and life coach for ambitious women of faith. Join me each week to learn more about the strategies, tools, and mindset needed to arise from the overwhelm and create a joyful life you love. To learn how you can work with me further, grab your copy of my best-selling book, Arise and Shine, or check out how you can get your ticket to my next Awake conference or retreat, head over to juliannekirkland.com. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, because the best version of you begins on your next level of faith.
Today on Next Level of Faith, we have Maegan Green, a podcast manager for female entrepreneurs. From former teacher to podcast manager, she shows people how to save time and gain more clients with their podcasts. And on today's episode, she's sharing how she answered the call to courage to leave.
Hey, welcome back to the Next Level Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I'm so excited to welcome Maegan.
Hey, Julianne, I'm so glad that you have asked me to be on here. I'm so excited to be here today and to talk to you.
Yeah, so Maegan's a part of this Call to Courage series that we're doing, and she's got an incredible story about her call to leave. And you were in the teaching industry, and now you are a full-time entrepreneur. So talk a little bit about like what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I was actually a teacher for 6 years, and my last day teaching was actually just a week ago today. So I am freshly a full-time entrepreneur. And really all of this started mainly this past school year because I had my youngest daughter in August. And so I went on maternity leave right at the beginning of the school year. We were like, I think 2.5 weeks in, maybe 3, because we started a little early. And while I was on maternity leave, I was like, I really just wish that I could just continue to stay home, but that just wasn't in the cards for us at the time. I had to go back to work. And for anyone who is listening and you are a teacher, when you are away for any amount of time, especially at the beginning of the school year, whenever you are really setting those rules and procedures in place and you're not there for that time, it's kind of chaotic whenever you come back, to say the least. So I did what I could before I left, but it was pretty chaotic whenever I got back. And then I think it was around December, like over Christmas break, like I was feeling this big urgency and call to leave the classroom and find a way to work from home because, I felt like I was missing out on all this time with my baby. And I didn't get any of that time at home other than maternity leave with my first. And I wanted to be able to have that time with my youngest because she is our last baby. Unless God decides to give us another one, she is supposed to be the last one. So I really wanted that time with her. And I started really looking into like LinkedIn and trying to network on there, trying to find some remote jobs. Well, I just really wasn't getting anywhere after looking for over a month, and I was getting frustrated trying to redo my resume because, you can't put a teaching resume out there for the corporate world. It just doesn't work that way. And then I actually came across a freelancing course to become a virtual assistant. And so that is how I got started. And I started my business. It was the end of January when I officially started my LLC. And I started off in social media management, but it didn't take me long to realize that that is not where God was going to have me at all, because it was really frustrating me. I did not really like creating content for other people, just myself. So I was like, this just isn't the place for me. And in the back of my mind, I had wanted to try podcast management from the beginning, but it wasn't as comfortable for me. And so I just kind of was like, it's not as comfortable, so I'm just not going to do it. But I'm sure, as we all know, just because it's not something we're comfortable in doesn't mean it's not where God wants us to be. I feel like a lot of the time He wants us to be in the uncomfortable.
That's right.
For the uncomfortable. So I found the podcast management program. It's by Lauren Wrighton. And I took that course, and here I am. what is it, over 2 months later into my podcast management business, and I absolutely love it.
That is so cool. So what was your like faith journey like through that when you've been teaching? And it's, I mean, especially now in schools, it is super strict. Everything's about testing and, you know, all these things. Like, what was your faith journey, like your prayer life, like during that time of transition where you knew, like, Lord, I know that this isn't for me, but I don't really know exactly what is for me. I just know you're calling me somewhere else. What was that like?
It was definitely very challenging, and even sometimes now it still is, because all I have ever known in my like adult life outside of college is teaching. I have absolutely never known any different, and but I knew that it was time because I was really losing my passion for it. It was becoming more of a chore to go to work every day. Like, I absolutely dreaded it. And while there are hard things about any kind of job you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working a 9 to 5, there's going to be things that are difficult about it. I knew in my heart that it should not be as miserable as it was. Because I really don't believe that God wants us to be miserable in our work at all. Yeah. Because then I feel like you're also not really doing your work as well as you could for him.
Right.
If you're absolutely miserable. And that is exactly how I felt. And so it was definitely a lot of prayer. Sometimes my prayer got put on the back burner because I'm really bad. And I think we all are to a certain degree about wanting to just do everything ourselves and trying to have that control. And then when things just weren't going the way that I wanted them to, I was like, okay, but the thing is, I'm not in control.
But wait,
I'm not the one in control. God is. So I really just tried to step back and, you know, obviously I needed to take some steps myself, but really let him take the lead, instead of trying to do everything on my own. And it has really taken a lot of faith to do that, because there have been moments, like, especially in that last month before my teaching journey was over, where I was questioning everything and feeling super discouraged because things weren't where I thought that they needed to be in my business. But I just leaned on him, and, you know, I was like, you know what? God has never not provided for my family, and he has always made a way, even when I thought there was no way. So it's going to be no different this time. As long as I do my part, you know, God is going to take care of us.
Yeah. And that's so true. I think, you know, many people, when they do finally muster the courage to leave any kind of situation that God is calling them out of, right? That we think, like, our carnality is like, oh, then it should be easy. And that is just kind of a way that we trick ourselves, right? Like, oh, well, if God's calling me to it, then it's just going to be super easy, and, you know, everything's going to go great and according to plan. And then it's not, Maegan. It doesn't go according to plan. And then we're like, wait, Lord, I was doing this for you. What's going on?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Like, I feel like that's where, you know, the enemy really, like, blindfolds us a little bit, is thinking that if it's not easy, then it's not what God wants. And I feel like the majority of the time it's not going to be easy, right? Because I forgot where I was going with that, but it's definitely usually not easy if it's where God wants us to be in our lives.
Right. And the reason why, in my experience, is because, you know, the vision, the person that he is growing us into, to be able to harness all the glory that he intends to receive from what we are giving to the world, like, that requires some serious development of who we are. It requires a lot of shedding of that carnality, of that selfish desire, of all of that. And so there has to be this kind of like uphill journey to be able to release all those things that aren't going to serve us, that aren't going to allow us to expand to reach the capacity which he desires us to hold. And so often we have these uphill journeys, and like John Maxwell says, uphill journeys with downhill habits. And that's why it feels like there's tension, because our habit nature is pulling us back down because it wants everything to be easy. And this new vision, this new pull that God has on our life is taking us up. And so there's this tension going in opposite directions. And it's like, no, you've got to release that, daughter, release that need for it to be easy, and just embrace your faith, embrace this journey that I'm calling you to, because it may not be an easy one, but trusting me can be simple. Like if we just release that need to control, like you were talking about, right? And that understanding that, at the end of the day, it's all for him anyway, like all of it. And if I'm not doing my work unto the Lord, like you were talking about with your teaching, I'm not supposed to be miserable. Like that's not his desire. It's not his desire that we live on earth and do our work for him and have children and do all these things and just be miserable in our life. And then like, once we get to heaven, everything will be copacetic. Like that's not it. He wants us to enjoy life. He came to give it to us in abundance to enjoy in the land of the living.
Yes, I completely agree with everything you just said. And I even have tried to tell myself, like, as hard as some of this has been, it is helping me to become a better mom, to be prepared for that entrepreneur lifestyle. Because and I learned this the hard way, and I think that any entrepreneur has, is that, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be times where, your business seems to be booming, and other times where it seems to slow down a little bit. But the beauty with all of it is that if you have the right mindset, you can give all the glory to him and glorify him in everything. And you think about any person who did, all these great things for God in the Bible, none of them had it easy.
Sure didn't.
Joseph, his brothers literally sold him to slavery, but he ended up becoming like Pharaoh's right-hand man. You wouldn't think that somebody that was sold to slavery by their own family would end up doing something like that.
And then go back and have mercy, and that's the thing, you talked about kind of like you touched on it, but it just brought me back to the expectations that we hold on ourselves. We hold on, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. I get to live this laptop lifestyle. Well, sometimes the laptop is not on a beach or not on a pool and, where all the pretty pictures are that everybody wants to post on their Instagram. Sometimes it's in your pantry. You know what I mean? Yes. And that's life. And I am all about let's talk more about that. Let's talk about the real stuff, because that is what people need to know about. They don't need to think that, to become an entrepreneur, to pursue what God has called me to, it's easy and it's pretty all the time. Nope, precious, it's not. Not. It's pantry work sometimes.
Yes.
So what has been some of the things that you've had to adjust to in your expectations as you are embarking upon this entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I've been 1 full week in my entrepreneurship for full time. So one thing that I didn't realize, and I tried to really not have too many expectations, because I know if you go into something having too many expectations, then you're going to be disappointed in some way or another. So right now, my 3-year-old and my 10-month-old are both at home. My 3-year-old, in August, she will be going to pre-K 3. So she won't always be here all day, every day.
Right.
But as of right now, I have both of them with me all day, every day. So just learning to work around their schedules, but to also give myself grace whenever it doesn't work out the way that I want it to, or the way that I envision in my head, because we all know that children are unpredictable, and life in general is unpredictable. Things come up, things happen. But I also think that is one of the best parts about being an entrepreneur, is you can always work around that schedule. Whenever I was teaching, and especially after maternity leave, I'm from Mississippi, and it's not this way in every state and in every school district, but they take away our days, our sick days, our personal days, everything when we're on maternity leave. So I had no paid days left. Yes, I know. That's a whole other topic that
Unless you're watching YouTube right now, you can't see my face, but it's just in shock.
Yes, it is
Crap.
terrible. That's a whole other, we could do a whole other podcast episode on that topic alone, but that's not what we're here for. But the point I'm trying to make is that, if a child got sick, I was going to have to take off work and lose pay for that entire day. Or if I had to leave work early, I was going to be unpaid for the hours that I was not there. And really in entrepreneurship, whether you miss a day or not, as long as you're serving those clients, you're getting paid regardless.
Right.
And so that's one of the beautiful things about it is it's like, okay, at this moment, my children need me and I can't do the client work like I wanted to, but that's okay. I have another time to do it.
That's right.
And that's one of the best things about it to me is you can make it work for you rather than trying to work around somebody else's schedule necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, there's a wonder. There's not a wonder, but you do. It makes me, I'm not going to say angry, but it makes me frustrated that school systems are begging for more teachers. And I'm like, you're not even taking care of the ones that you have. You know what I mean?
I completely agree.
But I had this conversation with a dear friend of mine the other day, because you see it in entrepreneurship too, especially when you start getting into those companies that are pursuing scaling, right? And they are so focused on, how do I get more leads? How do I get more leads? How do I get more people in? How do I, grow? And they're forgetting about the people that they have now. And it reminds me so much of, King David. Like, he knew he was going to be king while he was still a shepherd. And even though there was a crown in his future, he wasn't like, all right, peace out, guys. I'm going to go be king. Like, I'm going to start acting all royal. And no, he was like, okay, great. But right now I have to tend my sheep. Mm-hmm. And so I just want, like, anybody who's listening, whether you're in 9 to 5, whether you're in whatever realm of any kind of anything, you can apply this to your life. There are sheep that need tending right now. It might be your children. It might be your students. It might be, your podcast client. It might, whatever. Is there ability and capability to grow further beyond that? Absolutely. Does God want that for you? Absolutely. He wants you to increase your impact for his kingdom. Like, absolutely, he does. And he also wants you to tend your sheep. And I think that when we have our focus on the main thing, and that's why he says, seek first the kingdom, is to keep us in line so that we don't get so distracted by all the squirrely things and the shiny things and all these things that are pulling for our attention, that we're able to go, you know what? Right now in this moment when my kid is crying, I need to go tend my sheep. And then, now that my kids are asleep and this podcast client is relying on me, I need to tend my sheep. And it's being able to focus on the things that you need to focus on in that moment and give yourself grace and mercy for everything else.
Yes, I love that analogy you just used. I'm going to have to tell myself that. Tend to my sheep. I'm going to have to use that.
Tend to my sheep, honey.
Tend to my sheep. But that really made me think about the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
I feel like we are all so tempted in our worldly mind to always look for the next best thing, the next highest paying client, the next this and that and the other, next best house I can get, next best car, whatever it is in your life, that you're just always trying to look at the future, but we're not focusing on the present. And I will say I'm guilty of that. I think we all are. Like, my main thing is worrying about the future, because as a mom, I worry about my children all the time. And I'm always worried, like, are we going to be provided for? Are, my kids going to be okay? Is everything just going to be fine? When deep down, I know that God is going to take care of us. So I do try my best to live in the present and live in the moment and just feel like everything's going to be fine. I know this. And to not listen to the enemy, because all of that is just the enemy telling us all of those things, and they're lies.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think too, I was in, what was it? It was like a Bible study or some kind of small group at church one time. And I was new to the church, and this very wise woman was in there, and her kids at the time were in middle school, and she had been homeschooling the whole time. And one of them was about to go into ninth grade, and she was just like broken over it because he desperately wanted to go to public school. Like he was like, I'm done with homeschooling. I want to go into school. And the husband, who was a pastor, was trying to talk to his wife, like, no, this needs to happen. She's like, no, the world is crazy. They're gonna, destroy him, and like right, just like total mama bear moment. And he looked at her and he was like, do you honestly think God cannot take care of our son? Do you honestly think that we can take better care of him than God can? And she was like, because we forget that, yes, we have a role as the parent, but there's also a call on their life, and there's things that I remember going through that I would never have chosen to go through, that because I went through that, I was brought closer to Jesus, and it's like, that's why we don't get to see his plan for everybody, because we would freak out. We'd be like, nope, don't put him through that, Lord. Don't do it. But God's like, I know what, like, this is my child too.
Yes. And I think that's one of the hardest things to think about as a parent is, I'm a bad control freak. I want to be a recovering one. I'm trying.
She's like, but I can't claim that yet. So,
but I am. I'll be honest. But whenever we finally actually realize that we're not in control and give that away, things are going to go so much more smoother. Oh, yeah. And like with my kids, I always worry about the kind of person they're going to be. And, am I doing everything right? And I mean, I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to make mistakes because I'm human, and there have been plenty of times, and my kids aren't even that old. They're 3 and 10 months. But I'm like, look back and I'm like, I wish I would have handled that differently. Yeah. But it's also good for them to see that you're human too.
Absolutely.
I don't remember my parents ever. I've heard too many people that like don't apologize to their kids or don't like really talk to them about like why they got in trouble. But I think all of that is super important. Like you've got to show them that you're a person too, and that God is also molding you as a parent. Like, honestly, I have been challenged and tried a lot more in parenthood than probably any other time in my life as a Christian.
Maegan. I say it's like being hooked to an IV of humility. It's a constant drip of,
I see. If you ever say my kids will never.
No, you don't say it, Maegan. You don't say it.
Because they will.
Sure will.
And that first kid sometimes really spoils you into thinking, oh, like this part's gonna be easy. And then that second kid comes in and it's like, not every kid's the same.
Guess what?
Yeah. And then they change as the seasons change. So they could be one way one day and a different way the next.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to the woman who is trying to muster up that courage to leave where they've been in order to pursue what God is calling them to, whether it be, in a 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship, or from entrepreneurship into a 9-to-5. Some 9-to-5s are meant for people, you know what I mean? If it's to leave a relationship that's been toxic and, that's not for them. And what advice would you give to that woman who is trying to muster up that courage?
Number one is prayer. Definitely stay in prayer about it constantly. Because if you don't, then you're probably never going to find the courage, because you're not going to be able to do it on your own.
Yeah.
You're going to have to lean on God to help you to do it. And really, you just have to pretty much just have enough and get to the point where you can't handle it anymore, because that's how I felt in teaching. I was like, I cannot handle another year of this. Like, if I really feel like it would have broken me to go back another year. So once you realize that you've just had enough and you get to that breaking point, you have just got to ask God for courage and just do it, whether it is getting out of a toxic relationship, because I've been in something like that before, way before I got married. And, same thing with quitting teaching. It was very scary because, like I said, that's all I have ever known. I have never known anything different for over 6 years.
Yeah.
And it was very scary to go into my principal's office like 3 months before I knew 100% what I was doing and telling her that I'm not coming back. And that was terrifying. But when I left that meeting, I felt relief because I knew that God has something better in store for me and my family. And I had given myself to other people's kids for 6 years, and that now it is time for me to focus on my own kids and to nurture them.
Tend your sheep, Maegan.
Yes, tend my sheep. That's what I was thinking the whole time. Now I got to tend my own sheep, not other people's.
Yeah, that's so great. Maegan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your willingness to share your story with other women. I think one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this series on Call to Courage is because women's voices in our society today are being silent. We are so afraid to speak because, if you say the wrong thing, you're going to offend somebody. You're going to be labeled a certain way. And I am just on mission to give women the platform to speak, to use their voice, to be able to share what God has called them to, and the courage it takes to stand up and stand in truth and still be kind and compassionate to other people. So thank you for being a woman of courage.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I really do appreciate that you have this platform for women to come on and share their stories, because like you said, it is hard in this day and age to sometimes speak out because you're always going to offend somebody no matter what you say. But what I try to remind myself is that if we know it's right and it's what God wants, it really does not matter what other people think. And to just say it if you feel like God is telling you to say it.
It's so true. I love it. All right, my friends, that's all we have for you today. Remember, the best version of you begins on your next level of faith. Bye for now.